This is the Happiness Breakthrough Show with your host, Becky and Dr. Mark Leonard. Your dream has suddenly become your nightmare. That is every entrepreneur's biggest fear, that everything you're doing, everything that you're working towards is suddenly turning into a nightmare and things are not going as you were hoping. Business is suffering. You're feeling that great anxiety. And all of a sudden, your business problems are leaking over into your marriage. The very thing and the very reason why you started your business in the first place is starting to be impacted by your dream. Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about this idea of how to stay connected, how to create a flourishing love and relationship when you are an entrepreneur and all of a sudden things are starting to hit the fan.
Which is different than care. We talked a couple of episodes ago about caring for your relationships. This is different, as you will see. But have any of you guys ever experienced that where the thing that is your dream, you get into it and you're living it and you're like, I don't think this is what I signed up for.
I'm sorry. I'm laughing because I think every entrepreneur I have ever coached has had that at least once.
Yes, yes. And then it becomes your nightmare, like Mark was talking about, and pretty soon you're living this world that you're just feel like is spinning out of control, and all of a sudden all of your time is being sucked dry by the dream, the dream slash nightmare. And then all of a sudden your connection with your spouse is suffering.
Isn't it interesting when business is suffering as an entrepreneur, when business becomes a struggle, when there's something there that we were not anticipating, or we have employee opportunities and challenges, when supply chain isn't going as we were hoping, or when the lending isn't coming as you needed.
We could go on, right?
Supply chain, et cetera, et cetera. When a problem arises in business, often that bleeds over into your personal relationship. On the same token, when your relationship is suffering and having difficulties, when you're not communicating, when you feel distant, when you're no longer being connected, all of a sudden business begins to take a downward spiral. In other words, they're interconnected.
Yes, it's cyclical.
And it really is. It is. I love that word, cyclical.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about connection, and we've got some strategy for you on how to turn that struggle around, strengthen your relationship, strengthen that connection that you have between each other, and spice things up a little bit.
We're going to call this the love act.
And you can just read into that whatever you want. But really, if you want to strengthen your relationship and maybe even spice things up, we're going to talk about the 3 ways, the love act, that will help you to do so.
Okay, so let's start with the very first part of it.
Talking.
The, or talking. So the love act, TLA. We're going to be talking about TLA today, and T stands for talking. Okay, there is one thing that I have really had to focus on in our marriage, and it is learning how to talk.
I haven't struggled with that.
You're great at talking.
I'm great at talking to Mark. I would say this is really funny about our relationship is that if you look at us around other people, Mark is really great at communicating with people, and I struggle. We get at home and you can't shut me up. And Mark, on the other hand, I'm like, do you want to add something to this conversation?
No, I'm good.
Like,
You got this. You said it fine. And that happens a lot in our marriage where you want to talk things out, and I tend to be slower to bring words to the table.
yeah. But talking about all the things that go into a marriage is crucial for understanding where you want to go, right? We always tell our employees that we can't fix the things that we don't know about. That's like a main theme as business owners working with employees is if you haven't communicated it with me, then how am I supposed to know how to train to do things any different? And the same thing goes for your marriage, right? If Mark doesn't tell me what's going on, if he doesn't tell me about his concerns, about his struggles, about his ideas, then I don't know anything about how to be better, how to show up differently. I don't know how to be a better spouse.
Well, to be fair, I'm very much a person that when we are dealing with, we could talk about relationship or marriage, we could talk about parenting, talk about employees or business. I really sit and I contemplate. And there are many times in our marriage that I will say, and I'm sure you've heard this, 3 days ago, you said,
That just happened to us 20 minutes ago. A few days ago, you said something that really resonated with me. Like, what was that?
so I'm slower to bring things to the table. However, when I do bring it, it's because I put a lot of thought into it.
That's true. With that being said, I really struggle with talking about the important things. I can talk to Mark all day long about everything under the sun, but if it's something that I'm struggling with in our relationship, I struggle with talking. And I can go months. That's true.
Okay, so
It's a problem.
if there are other entrepreneurs out there who might be in our same boat where one likes to talk about it, one likes to ruminate, one is ready to talk right away, and the other one may not be. What are some things that we have done or things that we've seen our clients do that really help them get to the talking aspect in the relationship?
I think that you need to have a conversation about having conversations. I think that you need to make a pact together. Mark and I had to do this years ago. Years and years ago, we had to really take a microscope to our relationship and look at where we were struggling and then commit that we were going to talk about the hard things and do it in a manner that was respectful to each other, but also in a timely manner. And so I think having that conversation right out the gate about what our conversation styles are like, our communication styles are like, and how we can do better to show up for the other person was important. What do you think?
I I just had a recollection of our wedding day a little over 33 years ago, and we're standing there, and the bishop who married us was talking about how we should never go to bed mad at each other. And he was really encouraging us to talk it out. And that was interesting to me because I don't know if I had a great model of that in my home. However, something that I was trying to do. But I can remember many nights in our first couple years of marriage where we didn't go to bed till 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning and then had to be up for work and be there bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to perform at 8 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
There were many sleepless nights, but I think the pain, and I will call it the pain of learning how to talk with each other and learning how to set down the ground rules of what that meant for us in our relationship has paid dividends over the years. It didn't just help us in the moment, it truly helped us figure things out many years later about how we could communicate more effectively.
It's so true. This isn't about just the problems too. This is about having conversations about what you think that your relationship should look like, what your expectations are. Those expectations are across the board too. It's about your expectations about parenting, about running a business, about your intimacy. All of those areas are areas of communication that are crucial and you need to talk about it. People don't know how to fix what they don't know about.
There's a great book by Dr. John Gottman called The Seven Principles of Marriage. And in there, he talks about this idea of how do you create a, what he calls a love map?
Mm.
How do you create a map so that you both are on the same page? Now, you and I could, if we have a destination, for instance, if we're going to drive from our home in Arizona and we're going to go to Idaho, I am sure you and I would pick two different routes to get there. We would both get there, but we would pick two different routes. Is that true?
Potentially, yes.
Mine would be through Colorado,
Mine would be the fastest.
supersonic jet. Thank goodness that's how I drive. No, that's our so right. There are multiple ways to get there, but one of the things that we have learned to do is begin to map out what success in our marriage looks like. We've had to talk about it. So I think one of the things that I love about this idea of creating a love map is it begins to help give a framework around me understanding you and understanding your needs. And I wonder if this is what you were intonating earlier about talking about the hard things. It's even talking about those things that you need in a relationship.
Right? And what your expectations are. I I don't even remember who said that. Most often, our hurt feelings come from unmet expectations.
Oh, that is so mind blowing. Hurt feelings are because of unmet expectations.
Right. So if you find in your relationship that you've been drifting apart, maybe that's because you expect that your spouse just knows what your expectations are, and maybe they don't. Maybe over time, with all of the crazy going on in your life, you've forgotten to talk about the things that will help your spouse to understand where you're coming from, what your thoughts are, how you're feeling about something. I literally just did this the other day. We were having a couple of rough days, and I sat down on the table, on our little coffee table right in front of Mark, and I looked at him in the eyes and I said, Mark, I need you to dial in right now. But
Yes.
that was fair, and it wasn't rude. It was very respectful, and he took it as such. But we've had so many conversations like that where we've talked about what we need from the other person that it doesn't even have to be a big thing anymore. We can just say, this is what I need right now. And the other person's like, thank you so much for telling me, because now I know what to work on.
And as great as our marriage is, there's one superpower we have not figured out, and it's mind reading.
Mostly.
Did you just say sushi in your head? This is a recurring joke on our podcast. It's all the answer.
100%.
The answer is always sushi,
Always.
always. So,
Always.
but it's interesting. We can have a full conversation by looking at each other across the room without ever saying a word. However, when it comes to really important aspects of our relationship, of our business, of how we're treating each other, of our parenting, of our goals and dreams, it takes concerted effort
Mm-hmm.
and it needs to be intentional where we say, this is what I need.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things about that is probably point number two in the love act.
Listening. And I was going to say that too.
Oh,
Winning.
winning.
But, um, sometimes I talk so much that I forget that I need to listen. And remember how we said Mark doesn't talk as much as I do when it's just the two of us. When he's passionate about something or when something's building and all of a sudden he's talking, I've had to learn how to stop talking, how to really listen to what he needs, and even to listen to what he's not saying.
That's a really important aspect of our marital communication and relationship
Hmm.
is understanding not just what is being said, but what is not being said. But how did we get to that point, or how could somebody else get to the point where they go, yeah, I have no idea what my husband or my wife needs, and how are they supposed to be able to listen for what is being said without using the words?
Oh, I love that. Do you guys remember when you first met your spouse and your whole life all of a sudden revolved around them. You just hung on every word that they said. And then your family and friends were so annoyed with you guys because they were like, all they do is spend time talking to each other and they're up until 3 o'clock in the morning. And my goodness, where, when do we get time with them, right? I think that the longer that you're married or the longer that you're together, that you kind of stop communicating from from that same perspective, asking questions. I love when Mark asks me a question that has something to do with something I've been pondering. I'll be thinking about school and what I'm going to do, and then he'll say, what are your goals with this? Or where do you see yourself going? Or what are your dreams about X, Y, and Z? And then it really helps me to start opening up about all these things I've been thinking about and giving him an idea of my passion and my love and my ideas and all of that. But it can be said for any aspect of what you're going through. It could be struggles you guys are having, it could be business, it could be any kind of life, but asking questions, which Mark is really great at.
Now, I'm good at it now, but it's taken years of practice to learn to ask questions because my old way of communicating in our marriage was you would bring something up and I thought you wanted a solution. So
Yes.
I was listening to answer. I wasn't listening to understand. I was listening to solve. I was not listening to support. And I think our marriage took a major shift towards the positive when I think one day you got really upset with me and you were all, do you remember what you said?
I did. I'm like, I'm not talking to you to solve this. I just need you to listen.
And that was so mind blowing to me. So my first inclination was, wait, so then why are we talking? Because you don't want a solution? Because I've got a whole bunch of ideas. Here, if we just, make this and reform this and move the furniture this way, it'll solve everything. But that was not what you needed. You needed to express your thoughts and your emotions, and you needed me to just be there.
Yeah. Here's the thing though, I think that women do the same thing. Men get this bad rap for being the solvers and not listening, but I think that women do the same thing. We just might go about it a little bit differently, but I think that we both, as we care about each other, we want to help each other, we want to solve each other's problems. And so that's where you're having a bad day and I finally get you up about it. I just listen. Just listen to, like, he emotionally dumps.
Yes.
But it's so therapeutic. And then I know all the struggles he's been having. I remember one of our kids told me one day they'd been having this struggle in their marriage for over a year. And it was a financial struggle. And it got pretty heated. And there were times where I was like, ooh, are things going to work out between them? And anyway, months and months go by. And all of a sudden, some things fell into place and it started working out. And then they opened up and started talking to each other. And she's like, I had no idea how much stress he had, but when these series of things happened and he opened up about all of his concerns, all of a sudden she had this new respect for how hard it was been and in their marriage, and all of a sudden she was able to support him differently and to be able to show up differently in the way that she acted about things, the way she just everything that she did moving forward is different when he finally felt like he had the space to be able to just tell her about all the hardship that they'd been having. So listening.
And it really is. It's listening to support, listening to understand, listening to learn about your very best friend. When you got married, you didn't marry just somebody,
Right.
you married your person, is probably the thing that you said. This is my person, this is my soulmate. But something along the way may have changed that feeling. And the way to get back to that is to get back to the talking and the listening. And
Yeah.
it sounds so simplistic, but if it was so simplistic, then everyone would have world-class perfect marriages.
And do they? Do
No,
you?
and that's what makes it actually so difficult in the simplicity
Hmm.
is sometimes we say, well, there's got to be more complex answer to that. Mark, you don't understand what we're going through.
Oh,
Actually,
we do.
I bet we do. Because the other thing that we did when we learned to listen to each other, we then brought in the third aspect of the love act. So talking, listening, and then acting. And we learned to turn to each other,
Yeah.
not from each other.
That's another aspect of Gottman,
Yes.
of his principles, is about the turning to each other. And Mark and I have found that in all of the hardships that we've struggled with, when we choose to turn to each other and utilize each other as support, our marriage has been strengthened. So I guess the question would be, where do you see yourself sitting in that? When things get hard, do you turn to your friends? Do you turn to, hopefully you turn to your God, but you should also be turning to your spouse. They are your support system on this earth that's here to get you through everything. And without having them, how are you going to get through the hard times, and how is your marriage going to last if you're not willing to rely on your spouse during those hard times?
So one of the things I love is when I'm coaching couples or when we're doing some of our marriage retreats that we have, when we start talking about these marriages, and especially, and this is for everyone, but it's interesting, an entrepreneur is often working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and
Mhm.
it can have a negative impact on their marriage. The very reason why they wanted to get into business is, oh, I just want to have more time with my spouse. I want to have more time with my kids. I want to be there more often. And now suddenly they're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And even when they're not at the quote unquote office, they're thinking about it, they're ruminating about it, they're trying to come up with solutions, they're trying to come up with new ways of improving in their business. So it becomes this all encompassing activity
Mhm.
for them.
Mhm.
However, many of my clients, when we're coaching them on their marriage, have forgotten how to talk with each other, how to map it out, how to say, what is it that you are focusing on right now?
Mhm.
And I read a very interesting article recently that said, hey, I bet if you have been away from your hometown for the past 10 years, if you were to go back, things have changed. That restaurant you used to go to is no longer there. The streets have been paved or widened or changed or closed, or there's a new neighborhood in the field where you grew up playing. Something has changed. And yet we approach our marriage like, oh, well, we've always been together.
Right. So then you stop connecting to figure out how things have changed so that you can actually grow together, right? But I love this idea of acting. So now that you've talked and listened, now you understand how to act. And that might be in all sorts of different ways. That might be knowing better how to serve them. It might be knowing what you can take off their plate. It might be understanding their love languages. It might be understanding what their intimacy language is and how to show up better in that either of those aspects of your life. You know better how to care for your spouse and then how to act on that once you've talked and listened.
And now suddenly connection is something that is much, much deeper
Mhm.
because you're truly connecting on a much deeper level with your spouse. For my clients who are going through a difficult space in their marriage, one of the things that I really encourage them to do is to sit down at the dinner table together. What are some of the routines that they used to have that they're no longer doing?
Right.
And often those routines identify those breakdowns in their relationship. So, what is one thing that you used to do in your marriage that you're no longer doing? What is one activity that you could do over the next week to bring you closer? What is one conversation that you have been avoiding that really should be talked about?
Yeah. Yeah. And then being intentional about that. How much do Mark and I love the word intention? I think that we say that word all the time, but being intentional about the changes that you're going to make in order to strengthen your relationship. Is that going to be making space for date night again? We asked a couple of entrepreneurs that we're friends with, what are things that they do? And one of them said, you need to hire people that are, how did he put it? Your A grade people.
He said, if you wanted to create, and I'll put it in my words, if you wanted to create an all-star team, would you hire a B player? No.
No.
The only way you're going to win a championship is by hiring those A players. Well, that's who you should be going after in business. I remember working with one of my clients a couple of years ago. He was in the process of trying to grow his business from a couple $1 million to over $20 million a year. And I was helping him do that. And one of the things that we explored and realized is that he did not fully trust the vice president of his company. And what he needed to do was stop micromanaging him. I asked him, I said, okay, why did you hire him? He goes, oh, he's the best. He's the best. Why are you checking on everything he does? Why are you asking to correct his emails before he sends it out?
All right, where's the disconnect here?
Yeah.
Come on.
He goes, well, he's the best. I said, then you're not, because you are no longer acting the best. If you hired the best and you are now checking everything he does, the problem is not him, it's you.
Right.
And
I,
that caused him to step back and go, oh man, suddenly he actually gave over the reins that he hired the guy for. Hire people on your team that will take you to that next level.
and then trust them. Trust them to get it done, to give you the space. The thing that our friend said that was so, I think, eye-opening is when you don't trust people to do something, who are you taking time away from? And it's not you, it's your family, it's your spouse. So think about in your life, if you're a business owner, hiring the people and then trusting them to get it done to allow you the space to reconnect with your spouse. If you're not a business owner, maybe it's the people that you have in your life that you need to trust. Maybe it's babysitters, maybe it's your school teachers. Who do you need to put in your life that's going to solve the problems that you need solved? And then give them that space to do what they need to do to open up your space for time with your spouse so that you can connect with them again.
One of the great things about the love act, talking, listening, and then acting, is not only does it work in relationships, but it works in business. If you have employees, if they're not doing what is expected, have you actually talked with them, or are you avoiding? Have you listened to their concerns, or did you judge what they were saying? Are you taking action to help remove their roadblocks, or are you putting more roadblocks in their way? See, it works there. It works with your relationship in your spiritual life with God. Do you talk with God? Do you listen for answers? And then do you act upon the revelation that you receive? It works with your own self. Are you actually talking with yourself and having that moment to go, hey, Mark, I noticed that you did this. What do you think about it? Talking to yourself. It sounds silly, but
No, it's self-reflection. I love that.
and then acting upon the promptings and the revelations and the feelings that you need to act. See, the love act works in every aspect of connecting in your life with yourself, your relationships, in the community, and with God.
Mind blown. There you go. We solved your problem today.
Hey, a couple weeks ago, we solved your marital problems with our $3 fix. If you haven't heard that, make sure you go back and listen to that episode
Truth.
about marriage. And this, although was about connection and we used marriage as a backbone for it, Notice how much the love act actually plays out in every aspect of your life. And again, part of that excellence formula, if you're really going to become excellent in your life, you need to focus on your mindset. You need to become very clear with the words that you're saying to yourself and the words that you're using and thinking about other people.
Yeah.
You need to become crystal clear about how you care for your own mental health, spiritual health, emotional health, energetic health, physical health. You need to know about how you're caring for yourself and for others. And then you need to really raise up connection. And if you're off on any aspect here, that excellence formula falls apart and then you're falling apart. And that's what we don't want. So, okay, the love act: talk, listen, act.
Okay, so what do you need to do this week? Which piece of this do you need to focus and do better on in order to strengthen your relationship, specifically with your spouse?
Send us a message. We would love to hear which part of this episode resonated with you. Go find us on Instagram at The Happiness Breakthrough. Go to our website, thehappinessbreakthrough.com. Go find us on Facebook, Happiness Breakthrough, without the in front. Right now, I'm trying to get that fixed. Kind of a funny little Facebook rule thing. Driving me nuts. Anyway,
Yeah.
go connect with us. Send us a message. We would love to hear what are you working on? How is this going to impact you? And why is it so necessary? Why is it so important for you to focus on the love act in your life? Okay, our friends, we sure do love you. Thank you so much. We cannot wait to see you again.